The birth of a prophet is the title of our message, taken from 1 Samuel chapter 1. And we have three thoughts to guide us. Out of a consecration vow, verse 1 to 12. Out of a barren womb, verse 13 to 20. And out of the Lord's established word, verse 21 to 28. Israel was raised of God to be His representative nation, to witness to the nations of the world of the living and true God. We saw in the period of the Judges, Israel did that which was right in their own eyes. They departed from the Lord. They walked in their own way. And in this sad state of spiritual decay, the book of Judges closed. When we were looking at the book of Joshua, it seemed that Israel has reached a high point, having entered the promised land and possessed the promised land. But when we come to the next book, with Joshua gone, a new generation that arose did not know God. How come so stark a difference? What went wrong? And why is it that God allows such decay to take place? And it was so sad, isn't it? Because the people of God are the only representative of the Lord, of righteousness, of truth. But if the people of God are gone, what will happen to the world? You will just go worse and worse, isn't it? And God was not oblivion of the need of the time. God was not oblivion of the need of His people. In the fullness of time, God will raise a man for the renewal of the kingdom, which was now thoroughly disorganized, both within and without. So the book of Judges showed us the disarray that was taking place in Israel. When God is not at the center of our lives, everything begins to break down. And give it time, it will be utter anarchy and chaos, isn't it? And out of all the mess, out of all the chaos, out of all the sadness and the misery, it seemed as if things has reached a bottom point. And this was exactly what happened in Israel. And it was at that time that God will raise a man by the name of Samuel. How did that all happen? Well, it was a story of a godly woman by the name of Hannah, who asked for a son from the Lord. And Samuel was given to her. At that time, the priesthood was in great disarray. The sanctuary of God at Shiloh was thoroughly desecrated under the decrepit high priest by the name of Eli, and the base conduct of his worthless sons. The nation of Israel was given up to the power of the Philistines. They were overtaken by the enemy, within and without. And so if Israel is to be delivered, or was to be delivered from the bondage of the heathen, it was necessary that it should first of all be redeemed from the bondage of sin and idolatry. How can our family be rescued unless our own spiritual life first be strengthened, isn't it? And therefore, here you see the Lord leaving a remnant of His people in Israel began to do something. And you would see here, as a result of man's or Israel's departure from God, they would be shaken by heavy judgments. And the way by which the Lord would do so to bring them back to God was by deep humiliation. At that time, God will call Samuel to be the prophet of God. And the judgment of God would be announced upon the degraded priesthood and the desecrated sanctuary of God. As mentioned last week in our introduction, the first section of our book described the history of the renewal of the theocracy of Israel by Samuel. And it did not commence with the call of Samuel as a prophet, but with the account of what happened in the very heart of the religious life of his people, in the person of Eli. And a contrast there was made with the piety of the parents of Samuel, especially his mother, as we see an announcement that will be made concerning the judgment of God upon Eli's house. The call of Samuel to be the prophet and judge of Israel would form a turning point in the history of the Old Testament kingdom of God. As the prophet of the Lord, Samuel would lead the people of Israel out of the time of the judges and into the days or into those of the kings, from a theocracy to a monarchy. Like Samson, Samuel was consecrated as a Nazirite from his mother's womb. Samuel would accomplish the deliverance of Israel out of the power of the Philistines, which began with the story of Samson in the book of Judges. But Samson was one endued with physical power, but not the spiritual power of the word and prayer, with which he led Israel back from the worship of dead idols to the Lord their God. And so, while the high priest was judging Israel at that time, when Samson was beginning to fight against the Philistines, there was a pious Israelite woman who prayed to the Lord for a son. And that's recorded for us in this first chapter from verse 1 to 18. Her prayer was heard, and she bore a son to whom she gave the name Samuel, because he had been asked for from the Lord. As soon as he was weaned, she would dedicate him to the Lord for lifelong service. And we're going to take time to unfold the story of Samuel. When Samuel was weaned, Hannah would dedicate him to the Lord for a lifelong service. This we would see up to the end of the chapter. And how the Lord would be praised for hearkening, answering the prayer of a distraught woman. And we're going to learn and study what went on, what was the story behind Samuel's birth. Verse 1, our first thought, out of a consecration vow, verse 1 to 12. Now, there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim, of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuth, and Ephrathite. Samuel's father was a man of Ramathaim Zophim on the mountains of Ephraim, and his name was called Elkanah. And Ramathaim Zophim, the name was, or is only mentioned here once. After that, it will be mentioned in a shorter form by the name Ramah, or Ha-Ramah, or the Ramah, right? The place Ramah. Right? That's the place where of Samuel's hometown. And the name Ramah means the height. The height. 1 Samuel 2 verse 11 tells us that Elkanah stays in the place called Ramah. Right? He went to Ramah, to his house. So this man, certain man of Ramathaim Zophim, was a short for the name Ramah. For since Elkanah of Ramathaim Zophim went year by year out of his city to Shiloh to worship and to sacrifice there, that was where the tabernacle was. After Israel crossed the Jordan and established themselves in the land, the place of worship was in Shiloh. There was the tabernacle, and there was also the priesthood, the high priesthood. So Eli was there, and they would go there just as the Lord had commanded them for their place as the place of consecration, just like Israel will do later on when they would go to Jerusalem, that we have read in the Psalms, and how the Lord would also cause them to build a temple there in Jerusalem. But here we are speaking about Ramah, that Elkanah was from this place, and he had his home there, his house was situated there, and this was the place in which Samuel was born. We were told in verse 19. And they rose up in the early morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. That was the place. That was their house. Okay. And it was also the place that Samuel would live Samuel would labor, and Samuel would die. And that was a place that he would be buried. Where is this place called Ramah? Well, it is part of the allotment given to the tribe of Benjamin. Given to the tribe of Benjamin. It's 2 hours to the northwest of Jerusalem, we are told. Joshua 18 verse 21 and 25 tells us that this place Ramah belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. Now the cities of the tribe of the children of Benjamin according to their families were Jericho, Beth-holah, and the valley of Kezis, and verse 25, Gibeon and Ramah. Okay, that's the place there. The name Ramathaim Zophim means 2 heights of the Zophites. Right? 2 heights of the Zophites. The word Ramah means height. Right? You remember they would use the word the height to describe that place where Samuel would serve the Lord. It's his hometown. To distinguish it from other Ramahs that were there, and they came from the Levitical family of Zuth or Zohai. Right? We are told that his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuth, and Ephrathite. Right? We are told that this was their lineage. They are from the family of the priest, part of the Levitical family. And this is recorded for us in 1 Chronicles chapter 6 and verse 26. There's a correction there. 1 Chronicles chapter 6 and verse 26 and 35. And for Elkanah, the sons of Elkanah, Zophai his son and Nahath his son. Verse 35. The son of Zuth, the son of Elkanah. Right? That's the name there. And so the full name therefore is given here in the account of the descent of Samuel's father, whereas in the other history of Samuel, we see that the simple name of Ramah is being used to describe, which we will see later on as we study the book. And the tracing back of Elkanah's family through 4 generations to Zuth would agree with the register, the family register of 1 Chronicles chapter 6, where the ancestors of Elkanah was mentioned twice. Right? 1 Chronicles chapter 6 verse 26 and 35. And then in that of Heman, the leader of the singers, a grandson of Samuel. 1 Chronicles 6 verse 33. And these are they that waited with their children of the sons of the Kohathites. So they belong to the Kohathites. So the Levitical family, the Kohathites, right? And verse 2 tells us that he had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the family of Elkanah was a devout family. Yearly they would go to worship the Lord. Without fail, the family would be gathered together. They remembered that they needed the Lord in their lives, and so they were a consecrated family. The Levites in particular, They are supposed to be the representatives, as it were, of God to the people. And very much so, this is what is being told to us. And we say this, that indeed as Matthew Henry Wells puts it, ministers should be patterns of family religion. Right? If you have pastors and leaders of the church, they are to be patterns of family religion, in the sense that they are to set the example. Elkanah went up at the solemn feast to the tabernacle at Shiloh to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts. Now, this is the first time this phrase is used, the Lord of hosts, Jehovah Sabaoth, a name by which Samuel would use very often, and the prophets would use very often. Right? The prophet Isaiah, which we are studying in our prayer meeting, you see use that word, use that phrase to describe the power of God, that He indeed comes with His host, with His army. And probably we say the prophet was the first, Samuel was the first to use this title of God for the comfort of Israel. That God is powerful. In a time when they were oppressed, in a time when they were being bullied, when they were feeble, when they were few, when their enemies were many, and when their enemies were mighty, they had the support of God, whom they served, and He is called the Lord of hosts. And all the hosts of both heaven and earth, of them that He has a sovereign command over. Isn't it so true? When our Lord was upon earth, right, He commanded the devil to come out of the man, and He commanded the devils to go into a big flock of pigs after the devils came out of the man. They had to ask permission to go to the pig and the big herd of pigs. And our Lord Himself was in command of the weather. He was in command of the things that make up this world. And the people of God need to be reminded, isn't it, that we have a mighty God. Sometimes we go so far to use our own strength to devise and live, that inadvertently we would reach a sore point of awakening, where we realize that our own wisdom just doesn't work. And then we are brought back to reality, to come back to God. Elkanah was a country Levite, we are told, but he had not a place or office which required him to be in attendance at the tabernacle. But he went up as a common Israelite with his own sacrifices to encourage his neighbors and set for them a good example. And so when he sacrificed, he worshipped, he joins in prayer and thanksgiving with his sacrifice. It was an example that he set to the people around him. Although the nation was in decay, there was a neglect of piety, of religion in the nation. This man was different. Where his neighbors were worshipping other gods, they would miss their service to the God of Israel. Elkanah was a man who kept his integrity. Right? That's something we can learn, isn't it? The consistency, the building up a consistent spiritual life. We do not look at the weather. We do not look at the circumstances. We do not look at people. Of course, after we reach a certain age, before we travel, we look at the weather, because we just cannot overcome if it's like that. Well, God has provided us other solutions. But here, what we are speaking about is this, that when we are able, when we have the strength, we must be willing. We must be willing to follow the Lord, while God gives us the strength. And this was the man Elkanah. And we are told also of Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli. They were chiefly employed in the service of the house of God, but they did not conduct themselves well. They were very immoral. And yet Elkanah went up to sacrifice. His sacrifice was to the Lord. And he understood it. And he was there in Shiloh out of pure obedience to the command of the Lord. Even if the priests did not do their duty, Elkanah would do his duty to come before the Lord. This was the kind of spiritual integrity of the man. That is described there. Verse 5. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, and he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her wombs. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. You see here that Elkanah, although he was a man of piety, in the sense that he loved the Lord and that he would worship the Lord by going to the house of God when others won't, but he had a divided family. And we are told how the divisions of it carried with them both guilt and grief. The division in Elkanah's family was because he married two wives. It was a transgression of the original institution of marriage. So although he was a pious man, but there was something wrong in his family. He had two wives. And so we are told earlier, or we are told in verse 6 of the rivalry that took place between the two wives. Right? Her adversary, which is Peninnah, the other wife, provoked her, which is Hannah, sore, to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. Okay, so when you have two women in a family, we say the Chinese word for Chinese word for peace, an, right? An has a house with one woman in the house, right? One woman in the house. There's peace. There's one woman, right? But here there are two women, so no peace, isn't it? And we thank the Lord that these are recorded for us to help us to see when there is where there is sin, there is division, there is trouble, there is grief, there is guilt. And so Matthew says, from the beginning it was not so, that a man would have two wives. It was a mischief in Abraham's family, in Jacob's family, and here you see in Elkanah's family. And so when we have the law of God and we would obey it, we will follow it, there is peace. But when it's being trampled upon, right, you would see the trouble that is happening in this family. It is probable, we are told, that Elkanah married Hannah first, and because he had not children by her so soon as he hoped, he married Peninnah, who bore him children indeed. But it became a vexation to the family. Peninnah, like Leah, was fruitful and had many children. But the other wife, Hannah, like Rachel, was childless. But she was very dear to her husband, just as it was for Rachel to Jacob. And he took all occasions to let both her and others know that by giving her a worthy portion, right? Verse 5 of our text tells us, for he loved Hannah. This was a favorite wife, And so Peninnah could not bear the blessing of fruitfulness, but grew haughty and indolent, we are told. Hannah could not bear the affliction of barrenness. She grew melancholic and discontented. And so this was Elkanah's family. Okay? But he kept up his attendance at God's altar despite the unhappy difference in his family. He took his wives and his children with him, and they would go to Shiloh to worship the Lord. He did not let the divisions in the family stop the devotions. They all went up. And he did all to encourage Hannah to keep up her spirits under her affliction. At the feast, Elkanah offered peace offerings to the Lord, and they would eat their share of the sacrifice that were given, and Hannah would be given a choice portion on the table. So they bring their offerings. There is a portion of the offering that the priest would give it to them, and Elkanah would take the good part and give it to Hannah. So of course Peninnah is upset, right? She was the one who bore him the children, but Hannah was favored. And so that was the rivalry that took place, and that's what we saw in verse 6. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret. So Elkanah loved his wife, but she was barren, we are told. No children for many years. And you know, this is something that we cannot quarrel, as it were, with providence, isn't it? Something that you cannot.
Adopt.
Well.
Adopt fatherless children.
Well. Here we see the Lord. They have not exhausted all means, you know. So Hannah would seek the Lord, and the Lord would open her womb, though it was to be barren. But Peninnah was very provoking. Right? We understand what is provoking, right? We understand what is provoking. And she upbraided Hannah with her affliction, despised her because she was barren, and it was not a right thing to do. And we say heaven hears. Heaven hears. So with unkindness, she vexed Hannah. And Hannah was, as it were, distraught as a result of the provocations that came upon her. Right? The husband gave a worthy portion to Hannah, and the other wife was unhappy, and so imagine, going for worship and the bickering that is going on non-stop. So Hannah, we said, poor woman, could not bear the provocation. And verse 7, we are told that she wept and did not eat. Right? So she was given a worthy portion, a choice portion of the sacrifice, and yet because of all the provocation upon her, she was very sad. It caused her to weep, and she could not eat. She did not eat any of those of the holy things, as she was very sad with her predicament. Though Elkanah said what he could to comfort Hannah, we are told, in verse 8, then said Elkanah her husband to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am I not better to thee than 10 sons? And so he came to comfort his dear wife. Obviously, she was crying openly, and everyone was eating and she was not eating. So of course he was sad. And so he reasoned with her, right? He was disquieted to see Hannah overwhelmed with grief, with sorrow. And that's the trouble, isn't it? In a marriage, the husband and wife comes together and they become one flesh. And this one flesh is something very sacred. It is more than just what we see with the eye. There is a spiritual bond that is in that union. And there is sorrow when the union is broken. And so he says to her, am I not better to thee than 10 sons? Thou knowest, or you know, that I love you. And his affection for her, he said it openly. But she was very grieved, because you see, you when you live together,
Jealous.
It's a constant torment that you can't get out of, day in, day out. Inadvertently, you are living in the same house, you will see each other. You turn, you see each other. When you have a meal, you see each other. And when there is when the relationship is affected, you find that it's so difficult, isn't it, to be living together. And this was a little bit about the background of what was happening there in the family of Elkanah. Well, we'll carry on again the next time.